We're going to start with introduction. Farine, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Thank you all. Thank you, Kuros. My name is Farine Islam. I'm the Technical Assistance Director here at Partnerships for Parks. I oversee a variety of our programs for our grassroots groups across PFP and across our city. I oversee the grants program, which you all are tuning in for partially, right? As well as fiscal sponsorship, design support, and community coaching. And I'll pass it back to Kuros.
Thanks, Farine. I am also on the technical assistance team. Sorry, I'm having trouble flipping. I'm also on the technical assistance team. I really focus on our grants, so our Green Fund grant and this ioby crowdfunding grant. And I'll pass it on to Miriam, our fabulous partner at ioby.
Good morning, all. Oh, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, all. Good to see you. My name's Miriam. I'm with the nonprofit called In Our Backyards, and we offer coaching for how to raise donations. And then Partnerships for Parks will double your donations. So we're going to get into all those details.
Great. Thanks, Miriam. Appreciate it. All right. So first, I want to just go quickly into what exactly is crowdfunding. Some of you may have never heard of this term. Some of you may be familiar, but essentially it is a way of raising money in small amounts from a large amount of people. And typically this is done online. Whereas fundraising, sometimes it's associated with larger donations. This is really an opportunity for you to meet smaller donors. Here is an example of what the crowdfunding platform might look like for you. So, you can list out the specific items you're looking for, and there will be an opportunity for donors to contribute funding, and there will be a live tracker, which will show, how much you funded, how much you need, etc. And something really unique about this program and this campaign in particular is that there is match funding. So what this means is that, a portion of your funds will be matched, and we will match those funds. So if you raise $600, for example, we will go ahead and match that funding with an additional $600, resulting in $1,200 raised total. So it gets a little tricky that there is a maximum in match funding in this program. It's either $2,500 or $3,000, depending on the location of your project. And we'll go into that in a moment. But essentially, once you raise past $2,500 or $3,000, you can continue fundraising, but there will no longer be a match. But this is really an opportunity to double your impact. So all of your donors have a stronger impact to your campaign, and your funds will go much further. This opportunity. So just to summarize, crowdfunding is a fundraising effort. You're going to raise funds from your community, and we will match a portion of those donations to a certain amount. And this is different from grants because obviously a grant is awarded funding, and there typically is no fundraising effort required. The financial support is given to you, and you're able to use those funds immediately. Crowdfunding, you're really taking this opportunity to raise funds, double your impact, and meet your community and potential donors and develop those relationships. And I'm going to pass it on to Miriam.
Great. Thanks so much. Wonderful. So first I want to talk about who we are at ioby, and then we'll talk about what this is and how to use it. When we get to eligibility, I'll pass it back to Partnerships for Parks. You can speak to them directly about what they will approve, but let's back into who we are and how we would collaborate with you if you choose to. So first, we believe that neighbors know what's best for their own future. We teach local community organizing to raise resources for what is right for a thriving future. And so sorry, I'm distracted by the pop up. I'll just look elsewhere, pardon me. Um, so what we teach is based around organizing people and volunteers and in-kind donations, as well as crowdfunding money. So we all need money to do our nonprofit work, our community work. So you can be a nonprofit, or you can just be a person with a great idea and a fiscal sponsor. And we offer fiscal sponsorship. So let's go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So what it looks like to work with us is a quick intake form. You have an idea, you tell us that idea. We'll coach you on crowdfunding strategies, tactics. We are a library and we are one-on-one coaches. You choose what works for you. You don't have to do everything we teach. We offer a menu of tactics. Your donors visit your crowdfunding page once it's approved and live. And so you'll go through a draft process, you'll get approved, then you'll go live and your donors will donate to your page. As you fundraise, we keep teaching by email. We offer phone calls when you're stuck. And then when you decide that you're done, you keep what you raised. Say you went over your goal, you're a little bit under your goal, you've decided you're done, you close it out, keep what you raised, and you go to your project. Next slide, please. Thank you for managing that, Kuros. Our crowdfunding fee is 4%, and I always explain this is not paying ioby, this is not paying our staff. This is what credit cards and bank cards charge when people donate to your page. So we have to cover this together. We're in it together to cover the fees incurred by all the cards giving you donations. You can send checks to ioby. There's a mailing address, but that has a company that processes it. And so it's still a 4% fee because there's a charge for donations. Next slide, please. Then if you're not a 501c3, we can be your fiscal sponsor to give you the ability to raise tax-deductible donations legally, and you just get your money and you give receipts back to ioby. That's an 8% fee because you're under our accounting and our liability with the IRS. We always advocate, though, you might know a nonprofit who can be your fiscal sponsor, and I think even Partnerships for Parks has an avenue for fiscal sponsorship to ask them about. So you don't have to use ioby. I know it's an 8% fee, but we're here as an option. Next slide, please. Great. A couple examples of past participants in the ioby match program. Thank you. So this is one that's really lovely where in Transmeadow Park, they created new pollinator gardens. And then when their donations were doubled, they said, we can do twice as much. We were approved for this. We're going to host even more events. And so they taught citizen science classes, art classes, harnessing what they installed. And so they were able to raise, at that time, it was $3,000 that was doubled. And then they kept raising money beyond what the match program provided. As you can see their total there. Next slide, please. This is a lovely one where an existing garden said, we want to add a rain capture system because there isn't reliable water and electricity service. And so they're organizing a single weekend for everything to get installed. So they crowdfunded, they crowd-resourced volunteers, and then they crowdfunded 1,500, which was doubled instantly to 3,000. So that they could buy all the materials for volunteers to build this rain capture system. So you don't have to have a big goal with a lot of donors. You can raise $1,500 from 15 donors, just as an easy math example, and it's doubled instantly. Next slide, please. What you get from ioby. So we're a nonprofit. I'm always clear that we're not here to make money off of your fundraiser. We're a nonprofit funded by our own donors, our own grants, and we collaborate in these match programs where an organization like Partnerships for Parks wants to double the work that you're doing. And so we're here to teach with our resources and guidance on crowdfunding. You're assigned a one-on-one crowdfunding coach from our staff. That's what our nonprofit does. And then while you crowdfund, donations are multiplied instantly. So that means when I give $50 to my friend's fundraiser on ioby, it's instantly $100. You don't fundraise and then at the end see how much match money you'll get. You can see it instantly as people donate. The donation is doubled until you reach the maximum amount, which is $2,500 for some, $3,000 for others. Kuros will explain more. We offer fiscal sponsorship, so individuals and volunteers can still fundraise legally for the tax deductibility with donations. And then I'm always clear that the 4% fee is only on donations, not on your match funds. And so say you raise 1,000 and it's double to 2,000, you're not facing double the fee. It's just on the donations that we have to process, and cards are charging us that 4%. Next slide, please. Oh no, we don't help with incorporating. We're crowdfunding teachers. We're not able to coach how to file, but I know that some fiscal sponsors do help you with that. And so it's worth looking into and asking. Let's see, I know online there's a list of fiscal sponsors and you can click by state. I know that's not a direct link, but working with one, they can help you incorporate. We're only based in crowdfunding. Thanks, Horace. Next slide. Okay, this is your turn. Pass it back to you.
Sure. Thanks, Miriam. It was great to hear all the resources you offer. So I wanted to go into what makes your campaign eligible and approved potentially. So there's a few key requirements. The first one is organizational experience. We keep this requirement pretty inclusive. So there is some open-ended language here. So the application must be submitted by a group or organization with a proven work experience working within NYC parks, playgrounds, green streets, community gardens, and other public green spaces. So if your organization, launched 2 hours ago, this might not be the best campaign for you. Even if it did launch 2 hours, we would still evaluate. Maybe you personally have a history of working with parks, so we still encourage you to apply. Project location, the funding must be requested within one of these public green spaces. So parks and related green streets or street trees, playgrounds, green thumb community gardens, non-green thumb community gardens, and other public green spaces. So, if you're working on MTA property, DOT property, that's not going to work. We are really focused on parks and playgrounds and green spaces. Number 3, budget requirements. This is really a campaign focused on smaller organizations that are really trying to have a strong impact and get to know their community. So we are limiting this campaign to organizations with an annual operating budget under $50,000 a year. Number 4, past PFP experience. This is another one of those very inclusive, open-ended requirements. We want your organization to have some experience working with PFP, whether that's subscribing to our newsletter, communicating with your community engagement coordinator, applying to a previous grant. It's a very inclusive requirement, but we do want some connection to PFP and your organization. Number 5, reporting compliance. So this one only applies to those organizations that have received a grant from us in the past. Our grants require interim and final reports. So if those are outstanding and not submitted and late, you will not be qualified to submit a campaign. That being said, if you have a final report or interim report that is late and needs to be submitted, you can go ahead and submit that, and then you'll instantly become eligible in this requirement. And if you're not sure if you have any outstanding reports, you can email me, contact us, and we can check that for you. Number 6, campaigns must finish and cash out by November 30th, 2024. And number 7, ioby requires a minimum of 5 distinct donors in order to cash out. So we don't want one donor donating to your entire campaign and instantly doubling your fundraising amount. We really want this to be a grassroots campaign. I'll pass it to Farine.
Hi again, everyone. So I'll touch base on what is not eligible for this campaign. So because all ioby projects must have a public benefit, and same here for partnerships for parks, the projects must benefit the projects cannot benefit one specific individual, family, or business. So for example, you want to throw a crowdfunding campaign to really raise funds for a business across the street. That's not really the best case scenario for an application, because we really want to encourage work that's happening in the public space. So, or if you are looking to do a campaign to help someone's niece get through college, that's also not going to work, right? We're really looking for, as Miriam pointed out in her examples, things that really bring benefit to your local park or green space. And of course, encouraging volunteer work and stewardship in those spaces. Okay, so also, what's not eligible are projects involving political campaigning, lobbying, or contributions to political campaigns. Those are not eligible. So if a local elected is wanting to, have you host something in your park and raising campaign funds, that's not going to fly. And ideally, that is not something that you apply for. So really just these are here to help you kind of think about what is eligible, what's not. Fundraising for a pool of funds to be regranted. We really love, having you all participate in our grants. We cannot allow you to regrant our funds for something else to a smaller group, so no regranting. This is not for general operating support or funding staff hires, new staff hires. And then finally, ioby may determine a project ineligible at any time. So Kuros will soon get into our review process for the applications, but again, I just want to highlight, this program, the New York City Green Fund crowdfunding campaign, is a rolling program. We encourage folks to bring their proposals and apply as soon as possible so that you are, able to participate. But if they're for whatever reason, your application does not meet the priorities or the mission of ioby or PFP, your project can be deemed ineligible, and we can have a conversation about that as well. So I think we can move on to the next slide, Kuros. So we'll pass it back to Miriam at this point to kind of cover some frequently asked questions.
Yeah, thanks. And I always like to just chime in that in the previous slide, the not eligible, that's really just like all the legal stuff around what's legal for tax deductible donations. So it's just a stopgap to protect all of us. Most often your application and the discussion about it is never going to get you to a place where you have to be surprised by those items. And then just a few frequently asked questions that we get about all of our match programs. So first off, yes, you include your match funding in the goal that you set. So say you want to maximize the 2,500 match program, your goal would be 5,000. And this is because donations are doubled instantly, and it's all adding up together on your fundraising page. You're not raising and then getting doubled, so you want to include the match. Match funding is won by your donors, and so it's not guaranteed that you'll receive the full amount. And so we encourage you to apply soon, get started crowdfunding soon, because later when the matching grant starts running out, we'll have to send warnings, and we send a lot of them. We'll have to send warnings that, hey, match funding will only last another 6 weeks. So be sure to talk to your donors before it runs out. And then we'll give further warnings. Only 4 more weeks, only 2 weeks, any day now, it could run out. So you're not surprised, but we do like to warn you that match funding is not held aside for you. Donors are matched as they give, and everybody is getting matched as donors give. Next slide. Thanks, Kuros. So all donations are matched up to 500 per donor. So if someone gives 1,000, only the first 500 is matched. And so you will see 1,500. Oh, I'm sorry, my math is wrong. If they give 1,000, the first 1,000 the first 500 is matched. That first 500 is doubled to 1,000. You won't see 2,000, you'll see 1,500. And then to cash out, you have to have at least 5 donors. We just check that on the back end, 5 different payments, 5 different emails, it's names, etc. You'll give a revised budget for the exact amount that you raise, because it's very normal that you raise just a little under, a little over. So you have to give us a final budget for the nonprofit forms, and then tell us when you're going to implement the project, because later on we have to close our books by saying, how did the project go when you spent the money that you raised on ioby? This is separate from your reporting to Partnerships for Parks. Next slide, please. If you don't meet your goal, you just keep what you raised, and you implement a smaller form of your project, because your project was approved for this funding to do what you applied to do. And then you must implement by December 24th is the tradition, where you have to cash out by November 30th. It has to be implemented by December. Some years, though, an extension is granted, and that's between you and Partnerships for Parks. But over here at ioby, the cash out deadline in November is firm, even if you get permission to implement in 2025. Next slide, please. So just a reminder on the process. When you go to ioby.org/PFP, there's a button that says apply here. That'll direct you to their application. They will review and approve your application. Just to be clear, that ioby does not have updates about your application. You have to wait to hear from them. Once they approve you, you'll get an email handing you off to ioby, and I'll be speaking with you to register on the site, fill out your fundraising page, make sure you're all set to start. And it's for that approved project. You can only use what was in your application, and then you crowdfund, and we offer you coaching and guidance. Next slide. Thank you, and back to you.
Thanks, Miriam. Appreciate it. So just to reiterate, you can apply for this campaign on ioby.org/PFP, or if you're familiar with our website, on our grants page, you will see the NYC Green Fund Crowdfunding Challenge, and there will be Apply Now button for you to click. I wanted to give some insight on our internal review process. Miriam touched base on the high level approval process. But once we receive your application, we actually have to engage with several different stakeholders. So first, community group applies. Once you apply, I receive and review your application and approve or disapprove of it, based on our eligibility and all of that. Once I have reviewed your application, it now goes to your community engagement coordinator, who has to recommend that application based on what they know about you, what's going on in that park, etc. Next, it goes to the M&O team, so our maintenance and operations team, for the final approval. And there are many stakeholders involved in the approval process. So oftentimes there are delays just based on people's schedule, whether or not they're in the field. So I just want to reiterate our gratitude for your patience with the approvals, just because it does involve a lot of different members before we can finally send that approval email. So yeah, once we get all of the approvals from all the stakeholders involved, you'll receive an email from me saying your campaign has been approved, and then the ioby team will follow up and help you have your campaign go live. And for those that have applied in previous years, there are a few new things we're introducing in 2024. So the eligibility now is limited to 50,000 and under. So we've decreased that budget size. We've increased match funding to 2,500 across the board for all organizations that are eligible to apply. Last year it was 2,000 and now it's 2,500. Where it gets exciting is that you can raise up to 3,000 in match funding for projects located in environmental justice areas. In the application, you can look up whether or not your green space is located in an EJA, and that will determine how much you're able to match fund. And I will cross-check, all of the organizations and their locations. So if you are unsure whether or not you're in an EJA area, don't worry. If you mark no and you actually are in an EJA area, that won't slip because I'll be cross-checking everything. And you'll be notified, whether you qualify for 2,500 or 3,000 in match funding in your approval email. I'll pass it back to Miriam.
Thank you. Why don't we pause here for questions about the program before I offer our curriculum? Would that be helpful?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I know
We actually have the chat going, and there's a lot of great questions there, so I can pop those up. Everyone is muted just because this is a recording, and so if you have any questions popping up, as many of you do, please continue dropping them in the chat. Let's answer some of these questions. I guess, when do you anticipate running the next ioby cycle, rolling from January 2025 for cash out in December 2025? Jen, that is a great question. We are currently in a cycle, but if you are looking for something in the next year, those on the PFP side of things, our match funding is being planned for the next year. That has not been announced yet for 2025, but if you are looking for other crowdfunding campaigns, feel free to contact ioby and check out the other crowdfunding campaigns they have currently on their site, or any that might be coming up in 2025. As mentioned, we have been working with ioby for this crowdfunding campaign for a couple of years, actually over 8 years now. So this has been many iterations, and we've started at different parts of the year. This is the first time we started this campaign earlier in the year. We usually start in the fall. We realized that was weird timing. So our next collaboration with ioby will be announced later in the year, but we don't have set dates for that. So if you're looking for a separate campaign in 2025, please be sure to check out ioby's page. They have other crowdfunding campaigns as well. And I'll call out one more question before we dive back in, which is, Kuros mentioned that your project cannot be on DOT property. Our project involves tree beds in traffic medians. Would we be eligible? That's a great question, Phyllis. We'd have to see who is the property manager for that. You might find that it is DOT. You might find that it's actually parks. New York City Parks Department has street trees, the streets that are on their sidewalk, even though it appears that they're on DOT property, technically those are managed by parks, so that is eligible. You also sometimes see traffic triangles and things that appear to be DOT property, but actually are also managed by New York City Parks. They're called green streets. So if you have a question about the property, if you have the address or the cross streets, please reach out to us. Again, our email is greenfundgrassroots@cityparksfoundation.org, and I'll drop that in the chat in just a moment. If you have any questions about your site, do reach out to us and we can kind of help you answer that question. But yeah, I'd like to turn it back to Miriam. And actually, before I fully give it back to Miriam, I'll mention that we are monitoring the questions in the chat. We're getting to as many as we can now. And if there are any lasting questions, we will be sending out a follow-up email to answer your questions that we don't get to today. So thank you, and I'll pass it back to Miriam.
Thanks so much. I appreciate that pause. And one thing I'll point out from the chat, that's a really important question on how to do this. Once you're approved and you're handed over to ioby, just a quick email saying, great, your application was approved. Here's Miriam to work on getting your fundraising page up and running. All that means you're not building a website. You're not building a web page. All it means is filling out a form on our website, and that form turns into your fundraising page with a link specific to your fundraiser. And so don't worry, we guide you through all those steps. as well as teaching you how to crowdfund. I'll also mention that next week, our brand new website is going to launch on Monday. And so you'll see a fresher, newer, easier interface the next time you visit ioby. All right, let's get into how to crowdfund. And again, please keep typing in the chat so that we can keep answering questions. I'll be sure to pause at the end of this. I think it's just 10 slides, but it's a little bit of a preview on what you would learn with us and what it takes to crowdfund, because unfortunately, social media does not raise money. It's all about talking to people. So this is how to ask your community to support your work in a new way. And even for those who've crowdfunded before, you have a donor program that you run every year, you're experienced in this, we're here to offer our curriculum and say, maybe there's something new that you could learn. Here's a menu to try. We're here to talk to you. So we work with organizations that are brand new, they've never crowdfunded before, somewhere in the middle, or very experienced, and they just want to take a look at what we teach in case it helps. Oh, I don't have the slides. Next slide, please. Thanks so much, Kuros. So first we start with who is on your team to crowdfund. So not your organization, not your board, those are good teams, but you want to bring together a team specifically to do donor engagement, talking to people to support your fundraiser. Of course, that should involve your board members, your key players. It doesn't always though. Sometimes it's a skill or a time that only some people have time for. So when you think about who to ask to be on your fundraising team, these are the three things. People donate because they know and love and trust the person who's asking them. So you think about the people to fundraise with you who have those personal relationships to bring in to your cause. Then donors give because they love the place that you're impacting. So you think about who should be asking donors because they represent this place. They have a strong network and a strong voice in this place, and that'll bring in donations from those people where that's their reason. Third, the reason people donate is because they've been affected by the issue that you're addressing with your project that you're raising funds for. And so you want to think about who's been impacted by this issue and bring them into the team because they'll know other people who've been impacted and want to do something about it. And so you have these three layers. How do I bring people in who have personal relationships that they can ask, place-based relationships they can ask, and issue-based relationships to bring into our fundraiser? Next slide, please. Thank you. Then with your team, and an important statistic I always like to share. In our 15 years, what we see is that those who have a team, so instead of going it alone to crowdfund, even just one more person, a team of two, they raise money 4 times and sometimes 6 times faster than going it alone. So you want to multiply your teammates doing the crowdfunding requests, even if it's just one more person than yourself, because it goes much faster. More hands make light work. You get more time in your outreach bucket every single week. So how do you do this outreach? First, you identify who you will ask. So each of those people you invited to be a part of leading your fundraiser because they're part of the project, each of them will make a list of who they are comfortable speaking to. You don't have to do the scariest donor request. Just start with your comfortable list. The others will come later when you run into people who are less comfortable. Then you estimate how much will you ask this person, and then how you will ask. In-person conversations have the highest likelihood that the person will donate right then in the conversation. Sometimes you'll do your follow-ups later and you'll get them to donate later instead of in person. And so we always recommend at least 2 touches and sometimes more. Phone conversations are the next best way to ask. So you're making a list of who you'll talk to on the phone and how much you'll ask them when you're talking on the phone. And I'm going to get into later why you want to set out a number ahead of time and how that helps people give what they can give, even if they don't give that number. But here in this step, each of your teammates is making this list where you're going to have multiple lines for talking on the phone because you have different people in different amounts on the phone. Same thing with on the phone, different people at different amounts talking to them on the phone. And you make this list to do this chart because it helps you predict, okay, some people are just going to get a mass email from me and only 1% of those people are going to give. But based on the people I can talk to on the phone and I can talk to in person, I will raise $653 most likely. This lets you estimate together. I'm bringing 653, you're bringing 500 from your list. This other person, she knows everyone. She's going to bring 1,000 based on her list, but we're going to help her with talking to those people because her list is big. This helps you plan before you get started. That way you have your homework every week. Next slide, please. Thanks. This is just another way to see the same concept because people learn differently. What I really want to focus on is on the left side, step 1, down below, it says, FYI, in a perfect world, everyone would be asked to give. Everyone who we ask will give. But we know that the method of asking does affect how often people say yes versus how often people say, no, but thanks for telling me about it, or maybe, can you send that to me and I'll get back to you. But really it's that you'll have to get back to them. So you want to plan your time accordingly. And that's why we offer this tool where the second column there, the likelihood they'll give, that's not just ioby. That is decades and decades of donor research from expert fundraisers who do this all the time as their profession. And we teach it for crowdfunding, that the way you ask predicts, it's an estimate, but it's a decades long estimate of the way you ask predicts how many people are going to say yes and donate. And that's why you'll want to do more follow-up with text messages after you talk to people. Next slide, please. Thank you. The next thing, after you know who's doing the asking, and then their list of possible donors to ask, then you get to, what do I say to ask for a donation? That's where we are here. You want to get very specific, and the most frequent shift we see is shifting from, please support this specific project, shifting from that to very specific in why we're doing this. We believe in XYZ. What we're doing and how we're accomplishing it. We believe in this. And so we're doing XYZ this summer to accomplish our mission. Right now, donations are tripled or doubled. Pardon me, this is from a different program. So your donations will be doubled. And then the other specific item is a specific number. And here's why. You're giving an educated guess based on what you know about that person, and it's gonna be wrong. But when you don't say a number, people default to no. We know this in donor psychology. So when you give them a number, donors are more likely to just change the number while they say yes, instead of defaulting to no, I can't give to you today. You give them something yes to say yes to, but they'll change the number. So you want to give a specific number when you tell people, I know you also believe in our parks are healthy for our children. And so this summer we're hosting citizen science classes in our park. Right now our donations are doubled. Could you give us $50 because it becomes $100 for our kids this summer? I'll tell you more about what it'll look like. And that's the last thing here about getting specific. Always close with keeping the conversation open. I'll tell you more. Have you seen it before? Have you been there lately? Open the conversation to imagine specifically what the project is, and then bring them back around. You know, donations are doubled. We'd love for you to give 50 because it becomes 100 for us. Next slide, please. Oh, here's a quick example. This is about using using plants for traffic calming. Hey, Dominique, I noticed that cars speed way too fast in our neighborhood, and it isn't safe for our kids to bike or play. I started a crowdfunding campaign to install planters to slow down traffic. We're doing something right now specifically. Could you give $25 to make the neighborhood safer for kids? I'll tell you more about what it'll look like. Next slide, please. Now, when someone is asking questions about your project, we want to hold ourselves back from assuming that they're saying no and saying, oh, thanks, you know, I appreciate your time. This is natural, right? They didn't say yes. We're worried about asking a number that's too high. And so we assume that a question is questioning whether to give. Most questions are imagining what their money will do. So you want to have the conversation and then just circle back around to donations are doubled. So we're asking everybody for $50 so that we get $100 from each of our donors. Now, if you're unsure of what to ask, Give a peer pressure example. A lot of people are giving $30, so it becomes 60. A lot of people are giving 25, so it becomes 50. Give an example from peers, because that positive peer pressure can get a yes if someone is hesitating on whether they can give. Some people, they're not going to say yes, and that's okay. You know, that's half of your conversations in person. 75% of your phone conversations aren't going to say yes the first time. And so the easiest way to close positively is to say, thank you so much for hearing about what we're doing. Who are a few people you can text with this link, and just tell them why you think it's good for our community. So then they're doing the same thing you're doing, starting with why this is important. And so here's what we're doing. And they'll see the link to be able to give if they like. And that's the crowd. It's your list talking to their list. And a text message is the easy way to get at the crowd through your conversations. And I always include, some people are just going to be cranky about it. They really don't want to talk about it. You can ask them what they want to see next time. So maybe they'll get involved in your next fundraiser and stay on your list for future fundraisers. Next slide, please. All right, I really quickly, we could get into this a lot, but we really quickly want to give an overview of the 4 marketing stages that we teach. So your first donor conversations, the first marketing stage, is an announcement only to your easiest, closest people. This is close friends, close family, the board, the volunteers who show up every week. Your announcement is a very quiet announcement. We call it the soft launch, like when a restaurant has a pre-opening quiet launch. This soft launch announcement you want to only do to people you know will say yes, because what you're doing is getting money on your page, so your page does not say 0, and getting names on your page so that other people see that it's already going, it's already successful. And this is based in donor psychology from all the decades, not just ioby. Most people will not give until others have given first. So you have to get the first people in who don't need that validation. You ask the people who are already convinced, and that helps convince the next round of people you're speaking to. So you have your first 10 donors, maybe 15, 20, maybe 25% of your total goal on your page. Now you're sending that page that's already successful out. That's when you're celebrating to your whole list, your social media, you're texting people. That celebration, though, still focuses your conversations. When you're looking at that list you made of who you're going to talk to in person, on the phone, by text or email, you're now prioritizing the warm circle where you're going to get some no's, but you generally know these people closely. You feel like they support the project. There's just some maybes in there that you're not sure about. You're still focusing on your strongest next people after the announcement. So you're in the celebration, focusing on warm conversations. Then halfway through your fundraiser, that's when you're asking people where you don't know if they're going to say yes or no, but now you're more comfortable asking, you're more comfortable with a conversation that leads to a no, but you still get a few text messages forwarded on. So it's still a successful part of crowdfunding. So in the third stage there, we shift messaging in your marketing and we teach more urgency and less conversation, because these are people you're less close to. The last chance there, you go back to your entire list and ask everyone to tell their friends, help us get to our goal. We have only 2 weeks left. That's also a time where people who said maybe on the phone or maybe in person, you go back to them and say, hey, I know you were proud to see this happening in our community. We're almost there. Join us now before it's over. This is when you use fear of missing out to get people to give and be a part of your team, and getting them to, I see this, the follow-up, it's fear of missing out. So sorry, I didn't mean to use a millennial term. We want to give people the chance to be a part of something by just using the deadline as their last chance. And so that'll get people to give who said that they weren't sure earlier, they said maybe earlier. It's using their deadline to give people a last chance to be a part of your work. Next slide, please. I think this is the last slide here. Great. So bottom line here is people can't say yes unless you ask. So we teach how to ask. And so you're asking with your voice over the phone, with your voice in person. You're asking by text message to people who you know. And then everybody is asking their friends with a few text messages that share your link, whether they donate or not. And that's the crowdfunding piece. So you start with your easy people, then you move out to warm, then you move out to the rest of your list where it's 50-50. And you always say why this is important to the donor, which can be that they love the place, they love the issue, they are excited just to see what you're doing next this year. And you ask a specific amount. That way they have something to move off of. Guess at a number that feels appropriate so that they change the number, but they're still with you. We'll stop it there and ask or answer any other questions. But we're here for you as teachers, and Partnerships for Parks will take your application before handing you over to ioby when you're approved. Rose, could you click the next slide in case there's something important on it? Nope, there you go. There's your link to hit the application button. Thank you all. I'll turn the mic back over, but I'll get in the chat here to see if there's something I can answer.
Thanks, Miriam. And here is our contact information, NYC Green Fund, cityparksfoundation.org. If you have any questions, if you need to check, if you have outstanding reports, if you need to double check who manages your property, all of that, we're happy to assist. And I'll just stand by for questions.
As we have a couple of questions coming in, I'll also jump in and mention, I just want to thank you all for joining us here this afternoon. We know that it's not easy to kind of schedule these things in midday, but it really shows your commitment not only to your park, to your green spaces, to your neighborhood. And that's what this crowdfunding campaign initiative is really all about. It's really another creative way to not only raise funds for something you want to do in your neighborhood, but it's also a way to start engaging with folks that maybe you already know, as Miriam mentioned, or maybe those that you don't. So see this not only as an opportunity to branch out and do something that you've been thinking about doing in your park or garden or green space, right? You really have a creative idea that you want to try out. This is kind of a place to try it out, right? Fundraise for and get people to stand by you and support your work in your park. We really encourage new ideas, especially if you've been in touch with your Partnerships for Parks community engagement coordinator. Feel free to share the idea with them as well. They are your #1 supporters and will be able to tell you whether or not something is feasible. They'll be real with you, and so will we. So if you need some additional support about a project, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Finally, before I look into the chat, I see a lot of things coming in here now. I just want to thank Miriam for your time and just bringing your expertise to this. Miriam has been a partner with us for quite some time and is really a crowdfunding expert. So anyone participating in this program is really, it will be put in good hands with crowdfunding experts. So I just want to say that too, that is like one of the greatest assets. If you're just curious about crowdfunding and want to learn more about how to do that, about fundraising, it's a great educational opportunity as well. So let me jump in here and see if there's anything that we can answer now. And of course, if there's something we can't get to right now, we can also follow up in our follow-up email. So let's see. I see that there are some questions about incorporation. I will mention that this topic is different from crowdfunding. While Partnerships for Parks and ioby offer fiscal sponsorship programs, that is also separate from becoming incorporated. Miriam, is there anything you want to add to that point? Just because it is kind of a separate conversation, I believe.
Oh, sure, but we can integrate it. So our fiscal sponsorship means that the fundraising you do on an approved ioby fundraiser, that specific money can be on our accounting books with the IRS. And so instead of cashing out to your 501c3, we'd cash out to you. It has nothing to do with your personal taxes. It's not your income because it's on ioby's 501 books. And so when we give you your money with our fiscal sponsorship, we require receipts for every penny because it's over here on our accounting. Now, another fiscal sponsor might be your church or your neighborhood association or your friend's nonprofit, where they're willing to be your accountant. And so then ioby would cash out the money to that nonprofit that you tell us, and they will work with you to spend your money and log receipts for their accounting with the IRS. So for Partnerships for Parks, I think they have more of an application for fiscal sponsorship. So I always advocate talking to friends and colleagues for their fiscal sponsorship. And then we're here at an 8% fee.
Thanks, Miriam, for just speaking about fiscal sponsorship and how that works. We also here at Partnerships for Parks, we have a fee for donations. So that's typically at 10%. And that similarly is, we require receipts. We process those through reimbursement or pay vendors directly. But again, that is kind of a separate program altogether. Through this program, you can participate in through having a fiscal sponsorship, of course, through ioby, whoever else, Partnerships for Parks, but that's part of the cash out process. In the meantime, you are able to raise those funds through your crowdfunding platform, which is what happens once you apply, get approved, and are passed on to ioby. Just a couple more questions before we split here. I see that you have answered the question about payment platform. Let's see. I saw a bunch of questions coming in earlier about types of projects that might be feasible. I know that I mentioned this already, but if you have questions about types of projects that you're thinking about, we here at Partnerships for Parks can absolutely be that sounding board if you want to get something, get some of your ideas passed on before you actually apply. The good thing is we offer a bunch of resources as well to connect with your park. So I saw a question about the rat infestation. That is something I have seen in the past. And it really depends on the location of your park or green space. You might find that your community engagement coordinator has some resources, your maintenance and operations staff already has some regulations in place. So that's an example of, you really want to check in with your parks coordinators at that point. So you're not raising funds for something that is not going to be allowable due to regulations in place. So absolutely get in touch with us if you have any questions about specific things like that. But typically, if it's something that is approved by your maintenance and operations staff, it can be approved technically. So yeah. So with that, I'm going to wrap us up here today. If you have any other questions, let me just write this down. Grassroots at city parks. That is our email if you have any questions. Otherwise, you know how to reach us at our through the application. It's on the PFP website as well as on ioby. Any parting words, Kuros and Miriam?
Just thank you. And I believe this is the only match program ioby has in New York City and New York State this year. So if you've worked with ioby before, I encourage you to apply to this opportunity because while in the past we've had more matches, I think this is it for 24. And then without a match, we are always here as teachers and you can crowdfund with us and access our coaching during your crowdfunding. So we're always here at ioby.org. And we'll have a new website next week. So it'll look more modern. We know it has looked old. We'll have a modern website starting next week.
Thank you, everyone. I was speaking on mute, my bad. But like Farine mentioned, if you have any questions about your application, please reach out to NYC Green Fund, cityparksfoundation.org. And again, we really appreciate your patience with processing the application. It requires approval from many different stakeholders because it is public property. So we have to be extra careful. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you. And have a good afternoon. Have a productive week. Hi, Leona. Everyone, have a great rest of your week. Take care.